Hi, I'm Dave Caissy, founder of the Innovation Leaders Club. In this video, we're going to be looking at the Risk Management Innovation Program. Innovation Program was a main theme of our network back in 2024, and we had a lot of great discussion on this theme. When we're talking about innovation program, we're talking about multiple projects going towards the same goal, same destination. And ultimately, if you would like to know more about innovation program, there's multiple videos that was done part of this series. But in this video, we'll be focusing on managing risk in innovation program. There will be two parts to this video. This first part will be looking at identifying and prioritizing the risk, and then we'll be looking at building action plan in a second video. So let's deep dive into what do we mean by a risk management when it comes to a program. First, like when we're talking about innovation, we're talking about something new. So we're trying to do something different to improve. May not be different for the industry, but at least different for us. And it brings, because it's new, it brings uncertainty, and uncertainty means risk. So when there's innovation, there's risk. So if you would like to innovate, you have to be willing to take risks because it means taking risk. Some management team, they say, okay, I'm willing to innovate, but not to take risk. Then it does not work. It fits together. And so when we're talking about managing risk, it means managing uncertainty and being proactive. This is what is key in this way of managing. We're trying to proactively take some action to prevent some of the risk or have a mitigation plan if we are not able to prevent it, or if it's such a high risk that we would like to prevent it, but also have a mitigation plan in case it still happens. So if we look at the risk, there's three components. First is a probability, there's a cause, and there's a loss. So let's look at the uncertainty first. And so, like I was mentioning earlier, innovation means risk. And so we cannot completely eliminate the risk, even though if we proactively manage the risk. And so we cannot guarantee that there will be no surprise. And that makes um, tricky to let's say if you have a large program and you're asking for an additional $50,000 to proactively manage risk. The issue is, even though you're investing that money, there will probably still be some risk uh, that you will have to face. So you will not fully eliminate risk. And since we cannot do two programs in parallel to compare the one with proactively managed risk and the other one which is not, it's a real leap of faith that you have to do. That investing proactively time and money to manage risk is the right thing to do. But if you look at savvy innovation leaders, and one of their key reason why they're being successful is because they can foresee these risks and manage them proactively. So there's so something that is certain, so it's a problem. It's not part of a risk management. So if you have a problem, you have it. So you do something or you do nothing, but it will not change over time, and so there's no uncertainty. And so let's look at the loss. The risk must include a possibility of loss, and will manage risk to avoid that loss. And positive risk to be managed needs to be managed differently. I'll give an example. If you're getting twice the level of orders that you were expecting, this is a problem. But it's a nice problem, but it is not the problem that we'll be looking here. We're really looking at risk that have a negative loss to our program. And then there's a time component. So it must be program specific. It's not a problem of the organization. And so I'll give an example, like lose like key employees. This is not related to the program. It's a business, and so and also it has to be specific to your risk. I'll give an example. It has to be specific to your program. Sorry. So if you're to get suppliers to deliver you, let's say, some prototypes, and if the suppliers is late, then there's a time component, because if the supplier, so the risk is being late, but if he delivers on time, then the risk disappear. So it's time component related, and if it's not applicable, there's no time components. So this is a normal risk of being in business. So there are two types. First types that we have is the risk that really hits from the front, the one that we can foresee and expect them. They're predictable, controllable. For those that have kids, you see what I mean, or if you don't have kids, I have a picture for you too. And so then there's the risk that really hits from behind. So those are uncontrollable, unpredictable. Example like weather, economics, tariff, any of those things you cannot predict them. So really be working on the one that hit from the front, predictable, that you can control, you can manage them. So those are the ones that interest me. So let's summarize so far. So risk is a possibility unwanted event that affects the program, and risk management is to proactively identify and controlling those eventful unwanted events. But how you do that, there's 4 steps. First steps is identifying the risk, then there's prioritizing the risk, then and to drop the action plan, and then to follow up. So if you look at those 4 risks, there's the 4 steps. We're going to cover the first 2 in this video. So let's look at identifying the risk. So this is a step that we got to be careful, because if we do that step and we do only that step, then it's the risk management effort that I've done is worth it. It provides nothing. So if you list your risk in your plan and you don't do anything about it, in fact, it may have some negative impact on your program. So what are the steps? First, you identify those risks, and the risks, you got to make sure that they include the uncertainty, possible loss, and time component. Most of the time, what you will do a brainstorming activities with some key multifunctional stakeholders. Most of the time, experienced people that went through multiple of projects in the past, and you will either go through a different steps of your program, or you will go through the different categories of the program. Let's say the market risk, you'll go to the technical risk, the operational risk, the regulation risk, legal risk. So you can subdivide them in categories and brainstorm towards you could use AI to help you to providing the AI with your program to identify possible risk, and ultimately, you have to identify all the manageable risk. Sometimes you will have some risks that are not manageable, so make sure you clean up your list before you move to the next step. I'll give an example. I work with Texel, which is a plant for a program or plant fiber for the automotive industry. Textile, they are in the non-woven textile. So you see the different example of textile which are non-woven, and so you have multiple of those textile in the car. So the reason it reduces the noise while you're driving, and so you're surrounded by non-woven textile when you're in the car. With that, what makes the noise level to be as low as possible. So that's the difference between a luxury car and like a entry-level car. Like a luxury car has a lot more textile in it that makes it less noisier inside the car. So the issue with this is at the end of the product life, you can recycle the metal, the plastic, but when it comes to the textile, could not be recycled, so it had to be thrown away. So in this case, the program was targeting as having that plant-based compostable textile in the car, so it can for the circular economy. It would be better for the for 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 the industry to have cars that can be pretty much no waste at the end of their product life. So what is interesting is I when I got the mandate to facilitate that workshop, I talked to the president and I told him, okay, I'm willing to facilitate your risk management, and but there's a deal that we have to make. One of the issue when we identify risk, sometimes management team they want to kill the innovation program afterwards because there was a lot of risk that they didn't even know could exist. And in the step one, we got to get that those risks to be identified. And so we made the deal, but it was kind of not necessarily understanding what I meant. So then I facilitated the workshop, and we were in a room that we had like on the different walls, like the market risk, operational risk, technical risk, like the legal risk, regulation risk, and some others. And the walls were covered with risk. So when the president came into the room at the end of the day, it was like, "Oh, guys, how did it go?" And it was looking at the walls and say, "What is that?" Say, "Oh, those are the risks." Say, "Oh my God, we're gonna stop that problem." And so I said, no, 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 we're not going to stop that program. Like we discussed earlier, like we made a deal. So it was kind of funny, but it's a reality that happens. If we proactively manage, sometimes it does not promote the innovation. A lot of innovation were done, and people were not knowing in what they were getting into, and this is how they made it happen. But if they would have known that to begin with, maybe they would not have done it then. So obviously we're trying to be successful innovators and make innovation to be repeatable. So we're trying to learn from the past mistakes, and one of the past mistakes is if you can prevent something, better to do it earlier than later. So then prioritize risk. This is the second step. So if it's to identify the most important risk to be managed. And so we risk prioritization is probably the most critical. This step is the most critical because in the prioritization, it will mean that you will select also a few risks. There's you will identify those that are going to be retained and those that are going to let go. And ultimately you may have 50 risks, but you will be able to manage 5, 6, 7 proactively, and the other one it's you're going to cross fingers, or at least you're going to have a mitigation plan in preserving or having a reserve of time or of budget if those get to happen in your projects and in your program. So there's two ways, there's two methods to prioritize risk. First is the intuitive, and the other one is the analytical. So let's start with the intuitive. So it's quite simple. First thing you do, you identify the fatal risk. Those are the risks, if they do happen in your program, they may jeopardize your program, maybe even kill your program. And so those are the risks that you got to make sure that we manage them at first. So then using prioritization, those are the first that should be. Then there's from priority 1 to 3. So most of the time you'll be able to manage the fatal and priorities 1, and sometimes priorities 2. Most of the time priorities 3 don't have time to manage them. So how you do that? You use a prioritization table. You look on the left-hand side, probability of occurrence, and from low to high, and the impact from low to high as well. So using a simple Excel table, you can list your risk, you can probability of occurrence and impact, and then you can use that table to prioritize them. It works quite well. And that's what we did with one of the club members, Solu Agriculture, which is went into sustainable agricultural program, and it really suits their needs. Then there's the other method compared to the intuitive. We have the analytical. So it brings calculation. And some people think it's better because we make some calculation. While the other one is we really look at the intuition. And so what we do, we look at the probable loss, and we highlight the risk that expose the program to the greatest probable losses. And we select the top 10, 5, 7s, because we always have limited resources. So let's look at what is that probable loss. So we have a probability of a risk. So we're not sure it's going to happen. So probability, it's a percentage, like 50%, 20%, 5%, 1% time the loss. And if we multiply the two, then we have a probable loss. And so if we look at the probability times the loss, then we let's say we have 50% times 2 weeks, then there's a probable loss of 2 weeks. And then we can use a table and prioritize. If we look at the probability, we have in this case, we have probability 0.3 times 3 weeks, then you make probable loss 3 weeks, and then 0.5 times. So you see the maths are quite simple. So if I look at this one there, for instance, and I do so you see, you will end up with something like this, and using the highest probable loss, then you can prioritize. This is quite simple and it really convincing to a lot of people. But what is the issue with this? So there's not an issue, but something that you have to make an observation. The 0.3, like the 30%, where it comes from? Like if it happens, you lose 10 weeks. Where this information comes from? It comes from intuition. So when it comes to innovation risk management, you always ended up with some intuition. So this is why you have to do it with colleagues, multifunctional, experienced colleague. And when you do ended up agreeing on those numbers, it's probably because you're pretty close to the right number. And this is good enough for managing a program. There's no need to go further than that. And ultimately, anyway, most of them, you will not be able to manage them proactively. So what we're looking for is to identify the top one that you should be doing something. So that brings us to the end of this video. So we look at the step 1 and 2 in this part 1, and there's a second part that will be coming later that will lead on looking at how you draw the action plan and how you manage follow-ups afterwards. I hope it was useful. Looking forward to see you in part 2. Cheers. 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 Cheers.
If you haven't already done so, you can get your hands on our popular 60-page visual guidebook for free. Click the link in the description below. Don't hesitate to watch the next video to learn even more about innovation management practices.